And it's only fitting that our next session is staying within this realm of young leadership, and we'll welcome 3 inspiring young changemakers assuming leadership positions in their community and beyond. 15-year-old Chille Cynthia Bergstrom began studying aerospace engineering at the age of 8 through MIT and was named Space Futurist at age 10 by MIT's Media Lab. Chille is currently co-lead of secondary propulsion on MIT's award-winning Hyperloop team and has worked with the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, Elon Musk's Boring Company, the International Space Station National Lab, the World Design Organization, UNHCR, NASA, and Boeing, and is part of the Space Initiative at MIT's Media Lab. As an advisor to Volkswagen, their revolutionary pacemaker invention and an energy harvesting device, she was a finalist in the Mass Challenge. Welcome, Chille Cynthia. We also have joining us Gitika Gorthi, who is the founder and CEO of Ignited Thinkers, a nonprofit organization she founded in the 8th grade to spread space education and her love for aerospace to students across the world. She is an incoming freshman at Columbia University, congratulations, in their College of Engineering and Applied Science as a Davis Scholar. Gitika is an aspiring aerospace physician, medical researcher, and astronaut. She is also a 2021-2022 Teen Board of Directors for the Girl Scout Nation's Capital and 2020-2022 Girls Advisory Board member for Girl Scouts USA. She provides strategic advice to help make the scouting program more diverse, equitable, and inclusive for all girls. Lastly, as the student ambassador for Higher Orbits and founder of girl empowering initiative It Girls, 17-year-old Sophia Crowder aspires to be the next generation of STEMists, innovators, and space explorers. She is a staunch advocate for gender equity and founded an initiative It Girls to help those in IT and STEM. She also initiated a mentoring program in her community by leading STEM Squad, an educational program for kids K through 8. Sophie serves in the advisory board of It Girls, as well as the Girls Advisory Council for If Then She Can. Most recently, she was named one of 12 Girls of the Future, powered by the American Association for the Advancement of Science If Then She Can Ambassadors Program through Lydia Hill Philanthropies. I am so excited to have you 3 joining us today, and the floor is yours for your exciting session. We're so looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. So let's see. Hi, I'm Chille Cynthia, and I'm so excited to be here. Before we begin, I just want to quickly introduce our panel because these women are stellar and deserve a seat at every table when discussing the future because they are the future. First up, we have Gitika. Gitika is the founder and CEO of Ignited Thinkers, a nonprofit organization she founded in the 8th grade to spread education and her love for aerospace to students across the world. Gitika has conducted medical research at the Baylor College of Medicine Space Medicine Center, researched wind turbines at the University of Central Florida, worked to develop telemedicine technology at Brown University, was a student and researcher at Columbia Medical School for radiological research, and is intern at NASA Ames Research Center at Gene Lab. Gitika is extremely excited about studying humans in space to treat diseases here on Earth and advancing telemedicine for deep space exploration missions. Most recently, Gitika was named one of the top 100 women in aerospace and aviation professionals to follow on LinkedIn in 2022. She's an incoming freshman at Columbia University, congratulations, in their College of Engineering and Applied Science as a Davis Scholar. Gitika is an aspiring aerospace physician, medical researcher, and astronaut. Next, we have Sophia. Sophie is 17 years old and is a student ambassador for Higher Orbits and founder of the Girls Empowering Initiative called It Girls. Sophie inspires the next generation of STEMists, innovators, and space explorers. Sophie serves in the Girls Advisory Council for If Then She Can for female empowerment. Aside from being a spokesperson for STEM and female empowerment, Sophie is also a classical musician, a trained martial artist, scuba diver, TED speaker, and a space scholar for NASA's Virginia Space Grant Consortium. Most recently, she was named one of 12 Girls of the Future powered by the American Association for the Advancement of Science If Then She Can Ambassadors Program. She is a rising senior taking dual college classes towards an associate's degree majoring in science and math. so thank you for being here. When I was 11 years old, MIT Space Exploration Initiative asked me to be their space futurist. The founder, Ariel, believed that they can't just make decisions for the future and then not be the ones to carry them out. We are the future, right? Same with the World Design Organization. They also included me when we were designing for the International Space Station. But I became discouraged when I was included in the United Nations Space Generation Council and applied for an event for student members, and they rejected my application due to my age. This confused me. I am a student, so why disregard my thoughts? So my mentor, Danielle Wood, who runs the Space Enabled Group at MIT, sent an email to the director of the program at the United Nations introducing me and my work with MIT. She stated that I have a lot of good ideas to share and would like to be included. The United Nations wrote back so they only work with youth and define youth as ages 18 or 24. Sometimes they allow female youth at age 15, but repeated that the UN will never consider lowering the age of youth. My reply was basically, okay, so youth are adults. Got it. But if we look at Greta Thunberg and Malala Yousafzai and the two of you, Gitika and Sophia, we see that there are a lot of amazing youth that are capable of great things, including leadership. But it's rare that organizations include us at all. So there are so many conversations happening now around inclusion and equity. Yet I rarely, if ever, hear age being discussed when those conversations around inclusion take place. Mostly because I think no one really has young people sit at the table at all. So Gitika and Sophie, let me ask you this question. Should companies and organizations actively seek thoughts and ideas of the younger generation in order to create true inclusion? Or Gitika, go first.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak a part of this incredible panel. You guys are all incredible individuals and so honored to speak amongst you. And I 100% believe it is important to start young in any industry and that all professionals in all industries should include students of all ages because I believe that there is no specific requirement that one needs to give ideas, to be creative, to imagine, and to explore. Being a part of the aerospace industry, I realized how there's so many opportunities for young students to get involved. You don't necessarily need a PhD degree to do some scientific research. With your skill sets, you can still be curious and ask important questions that can on some things that adults may have not even considered before. So I'm a strong believer that it's so important to start young and to include young students in these important discussions because they will bring perspectives and ideas that adults may have not considered before. So yes, to answer your question in short, yes, 100%, we need to include students of all ages and beyond.
Thank you so much. Next we have Sophia.
Yes, and again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on this amazing panel. Bouncing off of that, completely 100%. They should have young people's input. I love that you brought up the point that they may consider things that adults haven't even thought of. Being a leader and having my STEM Squad initiative, there are brilliant young kids out there that are oftentimes not given the platform or opportunity to bring their ideas to the table and be taken seriously. So to put it in short, yes, 100%. Kids have so many great ideas, the youth, that should be seriously considered.
Thank you so much for everything, really. My city science professor at MIT, Kent Larson, taught me that we need to design for people and not machines. What does that mean exactly? If you think of a city environment, cities are designed around cars, a machine, not around how people walk and behave. When I think of how a pacemaker has a battery, when the battery dies, the entire pacemaker needs to be replaced. But our own bodies produce enough energy to power a pacemaker. Again, this is a design thinking of a machine and not how a human works. When we think of terraforming on the moon or Mars, it's an opportunity to create a world from scratch. Here on Earth, we have gravity that impacts our design of full walls and hold up a roof. But in space, we are not bound to the same force that gravity has upon us. Even the European Space Agency is now actively recruiting disabled astronauts. Because sometimes without legs may not need legs. I'm so sorry. because someone without legs may not need legs in the extreme environment of microgravity. Have you heard of the seventh generation principle? It's an indigenous philosophy that the decisions we make today should result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. If we talk about the elderly or children being part of a lunar colony, adults laugh. Space agencies believe it's unrealistic to think of a child or their grandparents in their community. That makes me believe that they aren't thinking of generations ahead, they're looking at the now. And if we design thinking of the now, it is more likely that they're designing for machines and not people. Because humans are created in all different varying abilities and races and genders and cultures and, yes, ages. But this type of thinking, the power to create an entire world from scratch, leads me to believe that we need to go even further and use the seventh generation principle. When space agencies refuse to look at 3 generations, a child, a parent, and their grandparent, I feel we will repeat the same design mistakes we've always created as humans here on Earth. So Sophia and Gitika, when it comes to outer space, are we really opening up the design process for the future? When the elderly and children are left out of the discussion on what a new colony should look like, and we'll have Sophia go first.
Yeah, well, based on the definition of true inclusion, including all without boundaries, if we're not taking into consideration the youth and the elderly, is that really true inclusion? I think that space already is, I guess, ahead of other industries and including all. I mean, we've seen some of the youngest people, I think 18 or 19, go to space, and the oldest through private companies. But let's see. I think that we really need to see somebody younger than 18 go to space to show these young kids that it's possible, because you can't really be what you haven't already seen.
Next, we have Gitika.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think it's so important to think futuristic and to think into the future. I think we as humanity have already learned from our mistakes and are starting to kind of see the problems with thinking about the now and not the future. And thought leaders like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and with Virgin Galactic, with Richard Branson, there are a lot of thought leaders in this world that are looking at the space to be this vehicle, this way to transform the world we're living in today. And I think we're already starting to look into the future and to think, oh, how are humans going to be sent to Mars? What are those steps that we need to take to have a sustainable presence on Mars and have potential colonies? And I recently went to the Humans to Mars Summit, which is one of my most favorite conferences that ever happens. And it was one of the first I've went to. But in this Humans to Mars Summit, I noticed that so many individuals from varying backgrounds, from like space policy to space art, space fashion, they were all talking about what this futuristic world in a few decades, in a few, maybe in like 50, 60 years, what could life look like on Mars? What are the things we're going to be needing? And they're thinking in a very futuristic way. So I 100% think we're working those steps to think for the future and not necessarily for the now. And aerospace is one of those incredible industries that provides you the tools to innovate and explore and to kind of push the bounds of what you think is reality or what you think is possible. And from movies like Star Trek or, the shows like Star Trek, a lot of the things that were shown in the original series, we're now seeing in real life, like iPads or the flat screen TVs. And so we're starting to make the future a reality through aerospace. So I 100% think that the industry is really heading in the right direction.
Oh, such interesting thoughts. My next point. In society, it is the oldest and youngest that need the most support, but many cities and systems are set up against this important part of our communities. It is as simple as looking at the global pandemic to see that our society does not value the most vulnerable because the adults aren't even wearing masks to protect the youngest and oldest. I'm going to throw this out to our panel. What message are companies sending if they are designing a world on Earth that excludes our most important members? And what impact does that message have on the next generation of children? We'll have Gitika go first.
Yeah, of course. I think that the aerospace industry is historically very stereotyped. Starting from just going back to the 1900s, there's been a huge difference in gender ratio, and it's kind of carried on to this day, to be quite frank, because only 1 in 5 space leaders are women, and 12% of all astronauts that have ever been to space have been women. And this is not the only form of, diversity that has an issue in the space industry, not just gender or gender identification, but also, age is a big one. And as Sophia mentioned, commercialization is really helping with that age factor. Ethnicity has been a big issue. Again, like Chille was saying, disability. People with disabilities need to start being able to go to space, and accessibility to the space industry, and to be able to go to outside into the world in space is so important. And all these accessibility points we need to be able to kind of focus on and to improve. And so I really think that we are starting to see programs like Ignited Thinkers, which is a nonprofit I founded to increase accessibility to space education, but also through fellowships like the Brooke Owens Fellowship or the ZEDS Fellowship in Canada. I think there's a lot of initiatives that are working towards increasing that diversity in the space industry and starting to break the glass ceiling for so many minorities, of different types of minorities in the aerospace industry. And so, thinking in a very positive light, we still have a long way to go, but I think there's a lot of initiatives focused on increasing that diversity. And there is still a lack of diversity in the aerospace industry, as much as I'd love to see, and something that I'm hoping to see in the near future. And we still have work to do, but I think that we're starting to recognize those barriers and that broken pipeline in the industry, and we're starting to fix it and starting to address it, which is important.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you. On to Sophia.
Yeah, so adding on to initiatives and addressing that lack, one of the first things that came to mind was my NASA Space Coast Scholars program, in which there are these figureheads that are asking us, well, with you as a youth, what do you think a future lunar base will look like, or a future Martian base will look like? Getting input from the youth. And so addressing the lack, that's one of the whole reasons I founded It Girls. I saw a lack, starting off small within my community, hoping that it will create a ripple effect going out. But there's a lack of girls that are interested in STEM. They're bullied out of it. Some of them, they think they're not capable of it. So seeing that lack and then trying to address it, even starting on a small scale and then going bigger, that grew into STEM Squad and all of these other initiatives. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Sophia was saying, something I'd like to add is, there are, like you were mentioning, that a lot of girls, a lot of women tend to drop out when they're in college. They're pursuing a physics degree. They tend to drop out of what they're pursuing, and a lot of minorities in general kind of feel that they're the only person that's standing out in a conference room, or they're the only 18-year-old or even like a 12-year-old, like in this room full of adults learning about aerospace. I remember I went to a very informal Zoom conversation about going to Mars, and I was I think I was the only student. And so I, did feel kind of like I stuck out in the room, not in a bad way, because I'm a very confident person, but a lot of, younger students may feel discouraged or feel like they're not good enough to be in this room to give input. And I think it's so important to continuously push and support and uplift these groups that may think they're going to stick out. I was interviewing through Ignite Thinkers. I have a YouTube channel, and I was interviewing a lady, many girls, many undergraduate students, and one in specific, Harriet, she was telling me how she was the only girl in her rocketry club for years in Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And so for her, it was, she's a very strong woman, but she knows friends of hers who stopped getting into STEM majors or who dropped out of their physics classes because they felt like they were lonely, they weren't supported by teachers, and they were not taken seriously in classrooms. So to add on what Sophia said, these types of initiatives are so powerful because we need to show minorities that they are important, they're valued, and we need their input for a more accessible space in the future.
Yeah, these initiatives are extremely important, and to anyone that is watching that feels that they are discriminated in a certain way or does not want to go into these certain fields because of the discrimination. I understand because I've been through the discrimination too, and I know it hurts. But I promise you, you will get through it, and you will be able to achieve what you want to be. Next thing. both of you, with inspiring the next generation. Both of you work with inspiring the next generation, the alpha generation, to go into STEM fields. Can we, as young teens, create a better tomorrow by leading the next generation into true inclusion? What do you think the future of inclusivity looks like? We'll start with whoever wants to go first.
I can go ahead. Yeah. So, when I think of the future and I think what all we can accomplish together, what I hope to see in a few years would be, students maybe from, 12 years old, when they got the primary, they discover their interests at a young age, talking with an adult, talking with professionals, and not just age, like girls, boys. There should be like a 50-50 ratio in everything. And I think, not just girls and boys, there could be people who identify as something else. Of course, everyone, just these different backgrounds, these different perspectives, they bring in their own cultures, they bring in their own experiences into a room to talk about something, to solve a problem that they might be facing, their community might be facing, and to work it out as a group, as a team. I notice a lot of times individuals tend to polarize or go into groups of people that look like themselves. And I hope in the future we can start making those rooms look more colorful and those rooms look more different with people of different abilities. And so I 100% I'm hoping that, it's a very, visionary, hopeful thought, but in the next 50 years, if not sooner, create that very colorful and bright room, just kind of chirping with these different experiences to solve a problem that we're facing in the world today.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think there also needs to be a lot more support, like from adults. I think of higher orbits, where I was there in a room full of other teenagers who are inspired by space, but most importantly, I was sitting face to face with an astronaut and talking to him like we were peers. And he was there telling us how important our input is in our ideas, that we are the space generation. I think of when I met you, Chille, at Space Congress. I got to meet the Orion flight director, Mr. Mark Kirisic, and he was there, and all he could say was, I'm so glad that there are young people like you, like all of us, out there that are sitting and listening to the panels, asking questions, that are excited about the future. And I think that support from adults is so important to inclusivity, because if we can see a future that is inclusive of all, that is equitable, fair, diverse, we'll be able to build on that and keep growing to build a better and brighter future for all.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just astounded by how amazing this panel is going, and thank you so much for coming to this panel. If the younger generations are included in the design process, do you think they will feel excited about creating the future?
I, most definitely think so. I talk with students all the time because one of my biggest, passions is going out and actually directly talking and speaking with students and inspiring them, which I know Sophia can definitely relate with. And, for me, whenever I talk with students and I talk about the opportunities of them to give input, to take part in naming a rover that's about to go to Mars or a different celestial body, their faces just light up. They are so excited about their contributions and how in first grade they could do something that has an impact, and I think just seeing their faces light up with these opportunities says a lot for students in general. Given the opportunity, given the way, the room to be able to speak in like this incredible panel, given this opportunity to speak, kids will be motivated and passionate to go further and to create change. I've seen some of the best change makers I've seen are students and are student led and young change makers, young adults. And I think sometimes just recognizing that students can have that incredible voice and energy, boundless energy to create difference is so important. And so for me, I would 100% think that students would be delighted and open to being that voice and to be that change given the opportunity.
I completely agree with the opportunity part. I mean, I can speak for myself too, but there are hundreds of others of teens at these events that I get to go to. And space truly inspires. I mean, as you said, when given the platform to speak about something that they're truly passionate about, these kids, we're the space generation. They're so excited to build this great future for all. And, when they're given the opportunity, they're empowered to be more involved in creating this.
Yeah, there's also this myth that a lot of adults like to say that kids are interested in space or they're interested in wanting to do STEM activities. That's just not true. They don't have the resources and they don't have the encouragement by adults to have them go into these things. And I think that's one of the main challenges that we need to tackle in this century. And what ways do you, and to both of you, what ways do you include all ages with your thinking?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I founded a nonprofit called Ignited Thinkers, which works to spread space education for students in K through 12. So our audience right there is for catered towards those younger students to be able to find mentors, to network with older professionals, adult professionals who have had experience in the aerospace industry. And through our different work, whether it be developing a contest and we're developing kits to send into schools, all of this is catered towards these younger students because they're the ones who need the uplifting at this point. And so, with the work that we're doing, we've really just diversify our audience. We reach out through social media platforms that students may be interested in, develop content that's very simple language that everyone can have accessibility to. Because I know some students who they hear like these really complicated lingo and they immediately jump out because they're scared. They don't think they're smart enough. They're not a rocket scientist to be a part of a certain conversation. But that's completely wrong. And the work that I do is really to show that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a part of aerospace. You could be interested in art, you can be interested in policy, you can be interested in economics, business, really just anything. It doesn't have to be STEM based. And so, with the work that we're doing, I definitely include students of all ages, kind of bridge that gap between students and professionals, and try to show opportunities for students to take advantage of, to work with adults and to create that meaningful change or to be a part of those research experiences that they're looking for and seeking for.
Yes, and with my initiative, STEM Squad, it's taking young boys, young girls, K through 8, to learn about STEM and science together in an inclusive and diverse field. And then with It Girls, taking something that is often seen or that isn't often seen as the norm, information technology, and making it appear more feasible for girls that, what, I can do this just as well, if not better than the boys. We took a laptop to these high schools and we showed girls that they can take it apart and put it back together. And after that, all of them, I think the one phrase I heard the most was, what, I really didn't think I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. And so it's making STEM and all of these other industries more inclusive for all.
Yeah, and last question to both of you. For Gitika, you brought up well-known leaders. What leaders do you look up to? I know we both share a mentor, Dr. Pandya.
Yeah, there are so many incredible individuals that I look up to, and I think most of my mentors who I've met have been on LinkedIn. But I think that if I had to pick one, it'd be very difficult. But the person who I've always looked up to is Dr. Mae Jameson, because she's the first African American woman who went to space. But not only that, she was the first. She was one of the first doctors, engineers, and dancers to be in space. And as someone who's aspiring to be an aerospace physician, an astronaut, looking up to the work that she did and how she continues her work with her nonprofit after retiring of becoming an astronaut, I think just inspires me that there's just so much room for change. You can always kind of push those boundaries, and you don't have to stop with one degree. And I think just looking up to the work that she's done has inspired me with my own academic and life goals. So my role model would definitely be Dr. Mae Jameson.
And then one very quick question for Sophia before we wrap up here because we don't have much time. Oh, no. It's 5. Sorry. I'm really glad both of you could be here today to have this super important discussion on ways others can be better leaders by including all ages in their design processes. I'm proud to have worked with the World Design Organization for the past 2 years, and I look forward to what is to come. I hope the audience will think to share with the groups and organizations in their life in an effort to create an environment that truly includes everyone.
Thank you, Chille, Gitika, and Sophia, for that inspiring conversation. It's so wonderful to see the change you are leading, and we at WDO will continue to cheer you on from the sidelines.